To introduce myself, I'm Faith Robinson. I'm the content curator for an exhibition called 3D Print Show. We run events all around the world that incorporate 3D printing in all sorts of ways and in all sorts of industries. So not just fashion, but medical, arts, architecture, anything you can think of. But in particular, fashion's of interest to me. So it's my pleasure to be moderating this panel today. So I'd just like to introduce our speakers. I've got Roberta. Would you just like to introduce yourself and tell us about your work?
Sure. Hi, hello. I'm Roberta. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I started a 3D printing jewelry and fashion business 2.5 years ago actually. And it's been a fantastic journey. Before that, I built a video games company called Bossa Studios for 5 years. And I saw there's a massive trend and a massive need for the fashion industry to rethink themselves from a value chain perspective, and an opportunity to use 3D printing to get consumers much more involved in the process of getting their garments and jewelry made. So yeah, I can tell you a little bit more about the journey. It has been quite intense. We're based in London, here in Shoreditch, 5 minutes walking from here. Team of 4 people, but we now work with 20 designers from all over the world, and we curate a marketplace. So we basically select really good designers who can create some very stunning and never seen before pieces. We look after everything, manufacturing, sampling, marketing, and photography, everything that is needed for you to retail a product. And all designers need to do is design, is to do what they love doing. And yeah, so it's I can tell you a little bit more about the details. We just had a pop-up shop in Box Park a week ago for 2 weeks. And it's been incredible to see how people react to the products offline and how everything compared to online. So I can tell a little bit more about that in a minute.
Great. Thanks, Roberta. And now, Bryan, would you like to just tell us a bit about your work?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me fine? Okay. My name is Bryan, and I'm a designer, a manufacturer, an educator, a consultant, and generally just someone who doesn't say that I can't do something for you. I come from the world of architecture, using not just 3D printing technologies, but generally robotic manufacturing technologies, whether it's adding material or subtracting material. And I carried my expertise from that focus of work into just trying to reinvent the world one product at a time from my point of view and with the latest technology of the day. And so in 2012 I started Shoes by Bryan, which is the world's first, the maker of the world's first wearable, customizable and eco-friendly 3D printed high heel shoes that you can actually chase buses after when you wear them. So they're not just props, but one of the first instances in the world of an actual product that you can make from a 3D printer that is designed from start to finish as an end consumer product that works just as well as the traditional counterparts. So that has brought me to a larger kind of agenda of going around the world and speaking about 3D printing and how it can revolutionize manufacturing in the future, as well as consulting to manufacturers and designers in the UK and abroad about how they can also take up new technologies to not only kind of strengthen the work that they do today, but see ahead with the rest of us that are on this panel.
Great, thanks. So one thing that I should just make clear is that this panel is going to be discussing mainly accessories, jewelry, as well as footwear. So we're not really going to be discussing garments and textiles, but hopefully you guys can learn a little bit more about the industry and how this technology is changing the structures at play within it. So I'm just going to start with a couple of questions I've put together. We can veer from them as much as we like, and if you have any questions, then please just let me know. So I want to start with asking you both what drove you towards the technology, and I guess why are you using it?
I got fascinated about the whole world of 3D printing 3 years ago when I bought my first 3D printer, which is an Ultimaker. And I'm gonna geek out a little bit, but it was a big discovery for me, because I thought, amazing, I can design some stuff at home, and I can, print some stuff at home, and everything the media tells you, it's super simple. You press a button, everything's there. And the reality is very different. So I figured out that it took me a long time to understand how to design something nice and wearable and good. You would know about that. Yeah.
Lots of knowing smiles.
Exactly, yes. A lot of time to figure out how the printer works, what are the right software. There's a lot of things to be solved in the 3D printing world, in terms of any consumers being able to buy a printer, get it home, and print something nice and good. So when I figured that out, and I've done quite a lot of courses in Central St. Martin's. I know quite a lot of fashion designers, and I was quite a little bit frustrated and annoyed about how the fashion industry works, and accessories as well as a whole. So to me, it was kind of joining the dots. It was like, okay, I have something here that is quite difficult to work at the moment from a consumer perspective, but actually that technology might solve a lot of issues that the fashion industry have been facing, right? From overproduction. There's an estimate that 50% of all the garments and accessories that you see in stores in the UK will go to landfills. They will not be consumed, even after being 80% off. So all of those, flags of issues within the value chain, I thought that by using this technology, I could start helping solving that, right? Not only by myself, but with other people and other companies that are willing to do the same.
I think all of us will agree that there's a lot of issues in the fashion industry that I guess a lot of the technology we're using is trying to overcome. So that's important. Do you agree, Bryan? What kind of problems are you trying to challenge and solve with your use of 3D printing?
Well, that ties into why I got into 3D printing in the first place. I was always trying to solve my own problems first, as in a very selfish way as a designer. In architecture school, I happened to become an expert in 3D CAD, and it wasn't long before I was designing things in the computer that was just far too difficult to make by hand. And at that point you have a decision to make, whether you just abandon your kind of hopes and goals of achieving something unusual just so you could finish a project, or all of a sudden someone says, hey, have you heard about 3D printing? You say, no, what is that? And you look into it and you're like, oh wow, so I could just design it and someone can make it for me and then I could present it tomorrow, kind of thing. Yeah, great, okay. So that was about 10 years ago. So I got into architecture. I work hard, but you could say that in a way there's a laziness factor to it, so like, you mean I designed it, now I have to actually build it and things like that. So the pure interest from the beginning was that I can imagine these things that are difficult to create by hand, and there's a technology for a price that will make it for you. That led me to kind of specialize in it. I agree completely with what you're saying, how like the beautiful thing about a 3D printer is that you can't really start a product business unless you have enough resources to start production, to make small batch production of goods, thinking about where you're going to distribute those things. And so the 3D printer has enabled me to become a one-person manufacturer and start prototyping in-house. And maybe we've all heard of the lean methodology for starting up a business, but that comes from lean manufacturing in the first place. And so from a sustainability point of view, from the individual trying to start a business as an entrepreneur, the technology is an enabler because it takes less capital to begin with the technologies under the 3D printing umbrella.
Can I just add something? Because what he's saying is really true, is like the time it takes for you to prototype when you're a product designer or when you are an architect or a shoe designer, it is quite a lengthy process, because you would need to go into other places in the world beyond UK to do minimum quantities and stuff like that. And with 3D printing, you can prototype, as long as you know how to operate the machine, you can prototype quite quickly. What we figured out in terms of WonderLuk was moving forward from there is that the kind of 3D printing that you see from the media, that is that small machine that creates very colorful toyish things, they are actually most of the time not really ready to be consumable by end consumers mainstream, right? Beyond hobbyists. So what the journey we went through was, okay, we prototype with this small machine, but once we're happy with the wearability and how it looks and how it feels, we tap into a much larger additive manufacturing industry, which is like literally large suppliers that are doing things for many other industries like aerospace and medical and etc.
You've both used the words manufactured art, product, how things feel. You also used the phrase handmade, that kind of thing. I just want to go on to ask how a process that is very computer-based in its design, how, in contrast to that, is the kind of tangible experience of your product important to that product? And I suppose, how important is that to your clients and customers? Bryan, why don't you start?
Well, I'm doing my best to kind of run an online shoe business. However, as a consumer myself, I know I have to go into a store to try it on, because something like a shoe is so, I mean, your feet might not be the only things that are hurt from wearing a bad pair of shoes. So you really have to go try them on. And so I've done pop-up shops as well, and people come to the studio and try on shoes. It really is a campaign to change the idea of value that people place in what a pair of shoes is, in my case. Because if you see on the internet a picture of a 3D printed shoe and you say, well, that looks like plastic made in China, might be one of the first few thoughts that come into your mind. And so you already have an opinion on it. However, you can't do what you normally do in manufacturing with a 3D printer. And so I've invented a type of insole that lets me use traditional footwear parts like leather with 3D printed shoe parts. So that won't feel like a shoe that you've experienced before. So feel is very important. Getting it in front of the customer is very important, because the media is doing a great job to hype up the hopes for 3D printing. And my fear is always that the media is going to put out far more sensational stories than the innovation actually takes place. So feel is very important in communicating that to the customer.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder in the crowd, maybe you can just put your hands up. How aware of 3D printing, like, do you guys imagine a 3D printer can create a final product? Put your hands up if you think that that's true. So, yeah, there's a lot of different messages coming from the media, which I guess you guys are trying to
exactly
kind of
and for I work very well with media, generally speaking, for both Bossa and WonderLuk, and we got featured by The Guardian, by the BBC, by recently The Memo, and it's, you name it, quite a lot of big publications, and it was always positive. So I cannot complain in that way. But what I do see, and partially agree with your sentiment as well, is there is quite a lot of effort and investment we have been making as a startup to educate or re-educate people in 3D printing. So I'll just share a little bit of some of the experience we had with our pop-up shop, which was quite fresh, right, 2 weeks ago at Box Park. Firstly, I was really impressed that people entered the shop, and just so you know, the shop that we created had a very kind of gallery feel, so I really wanted to be much more showing the pieces in a more artistic, you can buy side than the geeky world.
Yeah.
And still people entered, and everything was black, so there was no colorful toyish thing. Everyone entered, like 95% of people entered and said, amazing, 3D printed. So that was the first question.
And that would just not have happened even
Exactly.
6 months, 12 months ago, I guess. Yeah.
So
It's
it
amazing.
reinforces it is people want to be re-educated. They're still stimulated by the hype of media, but they want to touch. They want to see what it is. They want to appreciate. It's just needing more people like us and more people like you guys, perhaps, to kind of spread the word.
Yeah, and just going back to the question I asked the audience, can you 3D print a direct product? What are the processes go into making your fashion pieces, things that people want to buy and wear and use?
So our process takes anything between 2 to 8 weeks in total, from signing up a designer, because we are Curator Marketplace, up to the product is ready to be sold online. So it's fairly quick, very quick actually. But the process is we obviously work very closely with the designer to understand, well, on their drawings firstly, because we get designers which are product designers, architects, jewelry designers, fashion designers, car designers. We have a car we're working with a car designer right now. And we go through the process of them understanding, them designing everything. Then we do three sampling phases until the point that the pieces look nice. I'm wearing some of the nice pieces here myself. The pieces look really nice and wearable, and it has an edge. It has something that feels quite unique. And then we go through the traditional things of a retailer. You need to do the photography. You need to, make sure that everything is ready to be sold, pricing, and etc. And then once it's on the website, ready to be sold, anyone can go there, WonderLuk.com, purchase something, choose their size and color, and we manufacture on demand. So everything is made on demand in 2 weeks.
I guess that's a really kind of almost unique part of this industry, and it really relates to the messages about sustainability that you mentioned a few minutes ago. Instead of having to produce an enormous batch of a particular ring or a particular shoe style, you can make one. How does that benefit what you do, Bryan?
Well, so WonderLuk and Shoes by Bryan both tap into one of the more obvious opportunities of 3D printing, which is, for example, Nike took 4 decades, 40 years before they let you choose colors for your shoes, but we can do that from day one, and this is the great time for people that want customizable, unique fashion, have started to talk about it, and finally businesses are catering to that. So in the case of Shoes by Bryan, you choose the colors for your shoes, you get the shoes named after you if you're the first to pick that color combo. But then the promise goes beyond that to where I could take a scan of your feet and raise a show of hands. Who has a smartphone in this room? Everyone. Okay, so that means you all have 3D scanners in your pocket. So there are free apps you can download right now where you could take a few photos of something and it makes a 3D model that theoretically could be 3D printed. Okay, so someone could have images of their feet used so that they could pick an off-the-shelf design and have it adapted, and there's no significant cost increase because to communicate with a 3D printer from the beginning, it has to be a digital file, something done in 3D CAD, or yeah. I was going to say 2D, but it has to be 3D. And so it doesn't matter if what you make on a 3D printer is the same every single time, or if every single thing you make is different, because the 3D printer is just happy to make it.
Yeah, I think that's something that 3D printing can do for the fashion industry that not many other technologies can do, and that's to produce something on a potentially mass scale with unique products that are personalized to each customer. I just wanted to go on to ask how that sort of is illustrating how customer purchasing ideas and needs and wants are changing. How are people's expectations being helped by 3D printing, and are people using it?
It's early stages for 3D printing. And Gartner recently, a few days ago, actually released the hype cycle of 3D printing as of July 2015. And it's fascinating if you guys search for that. It's really
if anyone
good.
doesn't know what this, in the 3D printing industry, pretty much everyone knows what this cycle is. It's sort of like a report the industry, which demonstrates an enormous rise, and that's kind of recognized by the hype thing that's been going on for like a year, 2 years. And anyway, now that curve's going down, but it's on its way back up. Apparently, that's just what this report's
there is like a moment of I don't remember the right wording, but the moment of disillusion, and then you go into mass market, and then things kind of become much more mainstream, right? Why did I say that? I just forgot your question.
I was asking about how your customers' purchase experience is changing.
Yes, exactly. So this is happening with 3D printing. So it's very early stages, but I've seen this happening in software and games before. So that's why my belief that it will go into physical products. So people nowadays with apps, with games, they want to interact. They want to be part of the process. It's happening. It's not something that it might happen, a trend. It is happening. The millennials, or what is next after millennials, the recent graduates, whatever it is, they are they are really into consuming things together with brands, and they are demanding that from brands. And anyone nowadays can be a photographer by using Instagram. It's like it's there. Technology is there for people to use and participate in the production of things.
Just before I ask Bryan his opinion, I just wanted to ask the audience again: how many people here would feel excited and or confident about designing their own piece of jewelry online? I find that really interesting. What do you think, Bryan?
Well, who here has actually held something 3D printed?
That's awesome.
Really?
That's a lot of
Okay.
people.
Wow.
Who here owns something 3D printed? Wow, well, we're impressed.
Yeah, you guys are cool.
Good on you guys. Well, so to answer your question, every day is going to show you that more and more people are getting on board. When I do my events where people can come and I bring my 3D printers, because I don't think it's good enough just to show the products. Because when people
want to see the
enter my
process.
shop, they say, "Hi, do you know about 3D printing?" They say, "Oh yeah, we heard about it." And they walk right by a 3D printer and I say, well, that's one. They say, "Really?" And they go to, and then they're captivated for a few minutes. I'm like, so you know about 3D printing, but it's still aloof. It's still remote, even though the promise of 3D printing is that you can manufacture from your kitchen or your bathroom or whatever room you spend most of your time in anyway. It's still not around us. And so to me personally, I believe things become more relevant when you actually see the machines working. And that's when your brain starts understanding what's at stake here. Because until that, there's a hype machine that's going to tell you what the possibilities are. But each one of us might have a moment throughout the day, or more moments throughout the day than not, where you're just daydreaming or just thinking about other things, about what could be in the future. And then you look at this machine and you just think, wow, all the things I've seen in the movies, it's finally happening, kind of thing.
This point of education is really important. We've seen out of our customers, everyone who purchase at WonderLuk, either .com or in our pop-up shop, 40% of all customers want to customize, either by choosing the color they wanted or by even changing shapes.
This is Nikolay, everyone.
Oh, hello.
So sorry.
So yeah, there is once people are educated and understand what are the possibilities, they do. 40% of people are willing to customize.
Just to welcome you into the conversation, we're just talking about people's kind of their purchase experience, and also their experience in education and knowledge of 3D printing. Would you just like to really briefly explain what you do at Rare Pink, and just we can find out a little bit more about you?
Thanks. Sorry again that I'm late, guys. Just running from a customer meeting, actually. So our company is we're an online jeweler, and we specialize in fine jewelry, but we also specialize in another step further by offering our customers bespoke engagement rings in a way that wasn't available to them 10, 20 years ago, because bespoke was something that was very aspirational, but also very expensive for most people to be able to afford. And with innovations like CAD design and 3D printing, it's now something that's the cost of producing a bespoke engagement ring or piece of jewelry has dropped substantially. So the interesting thing about how the shopping experience has changed with us is that we were undecided in the beginning whether we want to even mention the 3D printing element, because we weren't sure how technology would affect our positioning as a fine jewelry brand and whether customers would perceive that to take away from the luxury element. So we played it by ear in the beginning and kind of mentioned it sporadically. And since then, we've decided that it's something that is very much part of our existence, and we no longer have that conflict. It's very much who we are. And in fact, we've even had referrals from 3D makers cafes, and we've gone around and we've left business cards, because people go into these cafes and go, well, do you know how I can create a 3D bespoke engagement ring? So it's definitely something that we've positioned us as a core of our offering.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's really relevant to what we've been talking about already. To kind of start to wrap up, I just wonder what your opinions are on the general fashion industry. What you said, Bryan, about 3D printers being known, being seen, being used, I think is really important, because until big brands' clients are using 3D printing themselves, they probably might not be interested in it, although your work kind of negates that in an interesting way. How long is it until the high-level brands that we all recognise and know and really like will start to use 3D printing? It's a really general question, but it's kind of interesting.
Well, will.i.am has them in his music videos since last year. So I completely agree with you. I think the biggest change that's going to happen for the value of 3D printing to a consumer base is going to just be led by bigger companies, simply because they have the communication channel to the most people in the world. Whereas the startup businesses, the entrepreneurial businesses, the businesses just starting to take up 3D printing.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
One thing that I have in mind when asking this question is the recent, I don't know if you guys saw, but Chanel in their latest couture collection integrated a 3D printed part in their material into one of their most classic silhouettes. I think that's interesting. A lot of people don't understand how 3D printing's been actually implemented into that look, but kind of regardless of that, it's quite a big step for our industry, that being the 3D printing industry, for a fashion house like Chanel, a luxury fashion house, to use this technology. It's giving it some kind of value. What do you think about that, Roberta?
I might say something controversial here.
You can do that.
I think it's going to take a lot of time for big brands to take on that. I think
Think it's a bit of a novelty in
I
that
think it's a
collection?
novelty. I think it's those brands, they jump on novelty things, and I've seen this happening with that, with VR, with games even, you know. There is novelty in there, and they want to be seen kind of hanging out with the kids, you know. And that's part of them showing, from a branding perspective, showing that
that they're aware of technology.
Exactly, yep. And they're there, and they're not dead in the disco. So which is important for them for their positioning, right?
Well, it's a really big step forward, because from my experience, I've been trying to contact big brands who I know are using 3D printing. For example, Louis Vuitton. They have been using 3D printing in all sorts of different ways for many years. And as a conference organizer myself, looking for people to talk about 3D printing, they just won't, and they never want to talk about it. That's interesting to your business, Nikolay, because you've actually decided to embrace this technology in the creation of a bespoke luxury object.
Yeah, and in our space it's exactly the same. No one talks about it from the big brands, but one space where they do is in the production side. So, for example, one of the biggest suppliers of gold to the jewelers, even they supply graph diamonds, for example. They've invested in £300,000 in a printer that's actually going to start printing directly into gold. And I know that there has been some 3D printing into metals, but not into soft metals like platinum or gold. It hasn't been possible. And I think that's going to lead the way to independent brands and small brands being able to 3D print directly in store, which is a very exciting prospect for the fine jewelry
absolutely.
space.
Just as a final comment, we're just going to wrap up now. Bryan, do you have any kind of last comments in kind of relation to what we've just been talking about?
Learn 3D.
Yeah, I would echo that actually. It's if I I think I was talking to you or someone just before. If I was graduating right now as a fashion designer, I would totally learn 3D. It is a big opportunity. It is where you can differentiate yourself, because there are a lot of things being done out there, and not many amazing things in the fashion and jewelry industry being made with 3D printing. So it can be a differentiator.
Great. Well, I'd just like to thank all of you guys for taking part and putting your hand up occasionally, and also thanks to our speakers. And thanks to Chrissy. I hope you have a great afternoon.